Hello and welcome to a series that we the Knightmares are going to call Blocks Aren't Bad. And we aim to basically show you that blocks are an extremely useful tool and not just code used for 5-year-olds. So, let's start with something simple. Let's just talk about what is blocks, how do I use blocks, and why should I even consider using blocks in the first place. So, first thing you want to do is go to either the Rev hardware client or the website, the IP, 192.168.431. 80 or 8, that nonsense. So, create teleop. We could just name this whatever we want. Let's just name it Apple Cat 123. And this is where you get all the samples. But for now, we're just going to do basic op mode, which has nothing in it. And so this is what the default one looks like. On the right side is all the Java, but we realistically don't need that. Okay. So first, I'm just going to break down what each kind of major block is. So this is logic. This is where you make your if statements. So like if, I don't know, if touch sensor is pressed, then turn this way. If X is equal to Y, then open a door. If, like, I don't know, if X is equal to Y and Y is not equal to Z, then blah, 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 blah. I mean, pretty much just basic code stuff, but in the form of like scratch blocks. Loops, for loops, repeat X times, repeat while X is true. Math, plus, minus, multiply, division, exponentiation, absolute value, square root, sine, cosine, tangent, arcsine, all the math stuff, pretty much exactly what you'd expect, mathematical functions. Text, not really much of a use in my experience, but still useful. Lists, I mean, you could use them, but like I haven't personally had an experience where I've had to use them. Variables, nothing here right now, but if we named one, this is where you define the variable, and this is where you use the variable. So like you could set a motor power to this. Functions, this is where you define a function. This is where you apply a function. So like let's say, how do I phrase this? Like let's just say I made it to where there was a complicated movement inside this function. Well, instead of having to copy and paste that entire thing, I could just put this Apple function in its place, and it would do the same thing. Miscellaneous. I mean, I don't know what else to say. So, with that being said, let's talk about how do we make a motor move at all. So actuators, DC motor, you see all of these motor controls. You want to take one of these two. They're the exact same. I don't know why there's duplicates, but the drop down here is where you'll see all the motors you have configured if you've configured them. This is, you could set the max speed, target position. We're not going to worry about this right now. It's just the power. And so what this means is it's literally just going to set a direct power to that motor. And the range is -1 to 1. So, for sake of convenience, I'm going to set this to something below the 1 because I don't want it to go flying off the table. So when I start this, oh, I need to refresh the driver station. Come on. Oh my gosh, it disconnected. Well, while it's taking forever, let's talk about types of gamepad usage. Like, how would you use a controller in this context? Well, there's two ways you can use a controller. As a boolean and then as a float. So this would be a boolean, which is basically yes or no, on or off. This is a float, which is any value between like X and Y. So for any kind of gamepad float, it's always a -1 to 1. See, this graphic kind of explains it. So like, if you wanted to, I can actually, let me run it real quick. But you see how the motor moves. And if I do change this value, like let's just say I do put it at 1, moves much faster. And the way power works is it scales from your battery. So it's not very good if you're trying to do autonomous movements, but if you're just trying to make a basic teleop, it works fine. So you can't use a boolean here because you're basically saying set power to true. That doesn't make any sense. What you could do though is set, like, if A, then, okay, come on. If A, then set power. But if we run this, what's going to happen is it's just going to infinitely run after I press A. I'm pretty sure. Yeah, okay. So how we fix this is we just put an else set power 0. So now, as I tap A, it goes that. And we can even do something like else if B. Sorry about that, my recording software glitched out. But what I was saying was we could do something like this, to where if we press B instead of A, it makes it go the other direction. So that would look like this. So we press A, goes that way. B goes that way. So that's how you would use the buttons, or like the D-pad, the bumpers. I don't know why I pointed at the buttons when I said that. That's how you would use it to control a motor. But like, what if you're like, I want to make it to where when I push the joystick, that controls the motor. So you would just take the power, and the nice thing is you can just plug it directly in. And so it's exactly what it sounds like. The right stick on the x-axis controls the power. Okay. So next, we're going to talk about how can we use, I don't know, variables. So we have this Apple variable. Let's say we wanted to do something like this. Come on. Like, we wanted to set every single one of these to, I don't know, to right stick x divided by 2. Now let's do left stick x, why not? If you think this looks weird, you're right. It's because it's kind of redundant to do it like this, because let's say, I mean, it'll do it what we want it to. It'll make it move. But if I wanted to change one thing, like I want to make it divided by 3 instead, I'd have to go through and change it on every single one. Like that. Which is kind of redundant. And that's why variables can be very helpful in this kind of situation. So instead of doing all this nonsense, we could just set the Apple variable to this value, and then get rid of this, set the motors to this. Now all we have to do is we could just change this, and it changes it for all of them. It makes it a lot simpler. That's pretty much all I can talk about in terms of the very basics of blocks. So you might be wondering, why even bother blocks? Why not Java? Why not Android Studio? I personally prefer to use block coding because it's easier for me to understand. I know certain people may have issues like with reading, like they may see this text, they don't really understand how it works, or they maybe have just grown up with Scratch coding, block coding. I know me personally, I've done a lot of Scratch type coding, block coding when I grew up. So when I first did FTC, it was kind of a, well, the first kind of coding I did was blocks, but when I started having to do Java, it was a very difficult adjustment for me. And so doing blocks first not only made me a better coder, it also prepared me for a more applicable coding language like Java. So that's pretty much everything I wanted to talk about today, and I guess just thank you for watching, and be ready for the next episode.